Good, Tom. This is Tom Irvine again. Our guest for this segment is Tom Irvine. He's a member of our board of advisors, and he's also the CIO at a company called MonoSol, which is a division of Curray. And you all make those little Tide Pods, right? That's your big customer. I imagine you have a lot of different customers.
Yes, yeah, the water soluble film is what it's called that separate surrounds the Tide Pods and other types of the pods like that. But Tide Pods are the biggest product that we make there.
Now,
Yes.
are those are your brand, or maybe you have different brands, but are your brands uh, what do you call it? Edible?
So, good question, right? The film that goes on Tide Pods is not, right? So in fact, we put an extra chemical in there called Bitterex, which if you try to put it in your mouth, it is so bad you spit it out right away here because of that Tide Pod challenge about
Uh-huh.
6, 7 years ago. We
Oh my
do
gosh. Yeah.
we
Well, I'm
do
not, by the way, I'm not recommending anyone do Tide Pods. That's
no, please do
ridiculous. That's
not do not.
insane. But I thought maybe you had products that were like
We do have
edible,
some,
like
yes.
pills and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do have some in one of our factories. It is human grade and they're used for some of the products are used for to put combination of spices together into like a great big bag, and then for industrial kitchens that are making say soup or chili or something, you just put the whole big spice. It's all pre-mixed, and then
Uh-huh.
it dissolves and it's edible. So we take great care on those to make sure that that it is human edible and grade on there. The other ones, though, we make sure that nobody would ever want to put those in their mouth by
Yeah.
putting a better chemical in there.
Yeah. Talk about asking the wrong question to start the interview. But I find it fascinating. I find your business really interesting and fascinating, what y'all do. And the technology part of it, you're in charge of obviously all the operational technology. Does your role go into, we never talked about this before, into the manufacturing technology as well? Are you involved in that?
So we do work with them. I don't have the operation technology under
Okay.
my on there, but we they rely on us, and then all the data that comes out of those machines then does go into a database that we support,
Got you.
and so there's
Got you.
modeling done on all of that and all. But yeah, at this point, the operations technology does not report up into me.
Okay, I said it wrong. So that's the manufacturing stuff. That's the
That's right.
operations technology.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So
Mhm.
you do everything else. All right. Well, that's great. So you went to the Gartner Symposium, right?
Mhm.
And which to me, when I saw their keynote, you can watch their keynote online. I watched their keynote. It seemed all about AI. So that's what they were really drilling in on. So you're gonna share what you learned from them in this presentation. So we appreciate you putting this together. Let's get you started. Why don't you go ahead and share your screen? I can. I think I can. See if I got to push stop sharing. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then you can share. There you go. And we don't see. There we go. That's it. So what I'm going to do is
Now, we'll go through it here again here. So the basic theme was 2023 was the year everything changed, and their point was that's when Gen AI was released. That's when saw such an uptick on the use of it and the connection that people are making towards that. So they spoke a great deal about this. Um, Part of what when they did though, the first thought was, boy, are they going overboard? And then as with all of the sessions and the way that they connected to it, and as I've had some time to think about it afterwards, it doesn't feel like that. I mean, these are the kinds of things that you expect from someone like Gartner to be on the to be able to interpret what's happening on there and what we need to be working on. So I'm going to go through the slides here. Most of them will be based on Gen AI and what they believe on here. But we started with a survey. Every year they do a CEO survey. They measure things like what's on the CEO's mind on here. You can see this one for the word talent on here. Of course, getting the right talent is going up in concern. Digital, always important, but getting more so. But AI, and this is the big jump here that happened in 2023 and in early 2024 here, was how much CEOs are talking about it. And so for those of us who talk with the CEOs, I'm sure you're having the same experience that I am, where they want to know, what does it mean? Is it a threat? How do we leverage it? What should be our posture, and how do we go about that? And then a little more information here about a little more details here about, it's saying that AI is the top disruptive technology and the fear of we're missing out, and should be worried about it as well. Gartner then comes into what they call their predictions, and their top 10 predictions for 2024 and beyond on here. A number of these are related to Gen AI, but a number of them are not on here. So I'll give you a second to take a look at what they mean on here, and what they're looking at on here. But energy, as you can see here, energy is important on here, believing that there will be such taxing on our energy grid, and especially with the advent of Gen AI, the usage of energy will become more important. That to me seems by 2026, they're saying 50% will have some kind of rationing. Unions, they're talking about unions for knowledge workers on here. By 2028 here, 1,000% increase in unionization. For many of us, we deal with unions at my company, but it's for our manufacturing employees, not for our knowledge workers. It's a prediction that they're starting to see as taking a big uptake on here. The malinformation. $30 billion diverted from budgets to fight malinformation. The more we rely on whether it's AI, Gen AI, or other tools on here, the more problems that it can generate on here, and the cost of what that means on there. The first one on here, charisma filters. They're talking about the ways that technology can be personalized in a way that makes people connect better. So an example of this might be a built-in camera that can look right, find where your eye is and make it look right, so you're looking right in the camera. So if I'm looking in the presentation, it would be able to do it. That's one of the ways. Other ways are interpreting how I'm writing into, say, a chat GPT, and translating it based on what they learn about me as a person on there. So a number of great things on here to consider as they look further down the line. Some of the trends here that I took from here: Gen AI makes people and more powerful and personally, professionally on here, and they talk about how machines are becoming more human. The way that we connect with machines, people are personalizing that connection. I told a story before. They told a story here about the vacuum, the robot vacuum, and that how they allow you to name it, and that much more current, more common, and that people, when working on Gen AI and other type of technologies, need to find ways to better humanize those interactions. They believe that it'll level the playing field throughout the world, so it's not just a U.S. or a European advantage now, that because of many of the dynamics, that countries throughout the world have a chance to be able to catch up quickly. And that it can also lead to a more diverse workforce. So some of the skills that are going to be required in Gen AI may have people that we today think of as a disability, may give them an advantage in working through some of those. So some interesting turns and excitement there. They'll get over their worst traits, so it can mitigate some of the problems and create others. So energy cost, investments, can be on one side. The way we rethink our operations or work, employment strategy could be an advantage on the other side. And they see legacy app modernization as a sweet spot for Gen AI. So many of us have technical debt, have legacy apps that we have to maintain, and finding it harder and harder to find the right people. Gartner is saying that Gen AI can play a huge role in modernizing those applications. And then threats bring new responsibilities and communities here. Malinformation, the CISO role will increase. So they talk about that the CISO will eventually, their prediction, that will also not just be responsible for security threats, but also for data threats. So the malinformation, the bad information, the bad way that the company can be presented might become part of a CISO role, as opposed to just a data analytics or data manager role. And then unions, we already talked about that role. So one of the things that Gartner features is what they call the hype cycle. And so their overall emerging tech hype cycle here that they presented is you see in front of you here. And these are all the technologies. So the first one, what they call the innovation trigger, are just where they're getting started. And so there's expectations being drawn about these. There's some basic definitions about what that technology might do. When it gets to the top is where they call it the peak of these inflated expectations. And you can see Gen AI at the top right now. And that after that point, there starts to become some kind of a disillusionment, because technologies most always don't match up with what the promise was, and then you start to see a condensing of the number of players in the field during that cycle. And then the last one, the slope of enlightenment, is okay. Now we figured out how to use it, and we're starting to see real value. And then the final one is the plateau of productivity. And then usually you see it again on there. So the color on there, that light color on Gen AI, means how long will it take to get to that plateau? They're saying 2 to 5 years with Gen AI. Some of the other ones on here, like neurosymbolic AI, is 10 years. So it gives you a sense of how fast they think this cycle is moving, and Gen AI is moving very quickly. A little more specific here on the AI hype cycle is, as you can still see, Gen AI is up at the top on here, but you see a number of other things on here. So things like computer. So other things that predictions that they had made on here: by 2026, more than 80% of independent software vendors will have embedded Gen AI capabilities in their enterprise. Today, it's 1%. So we hear a lot from our vendors, right, telling us about how they've got AI. I was just on a call with Salesforce yesterday, where they mentioned that they are that they've been working on AI since 2014. And yet they're still working on it and trying to get it implemented in the everyday work in Salesforce. So this is seen as a real spot where they will be moving fast. Other ones on here that Gen AI will be a workforce partner for 90% of the companies. 50% of the enterprises by 2028 will build their own LLMs and from scratch, and will on a daily basis. And then they go into a kind of a recommendation of 4 key ideas. That they're saying the era of Gen AI will shift human-machine relationships, and so that gets back to kind of what I mentioned before here, that people will connect in many ways, and many more ways than they do today, to the machine. And the better that connection is, the better, the more seamless it is, the better your organization will do. And that to do that, you need machine experts and human experts. So how do we get the machine to work in a way, and you also need to be able to understand how do humans want to interact with the machine. And then the key relationship shift here is designing from attention. Right now, we look at, are we getting clicks? Are people looking at our products? How are they using them? And that way, to getting intimacy. So how close do they feel with our systems? So there is and this comes this makes sense, because many times people will say, I don't want to talk to a human. I just want to be able to go online and get the answer I need without having to be on the phone with someone. So how do you make it so that interaction becomes like a family member, or part of one that you feel connected to? And then the last one, which really should be the first one, we need guiding principles to address the unforeseen dilemmas. So there are so many things that could come out of this. Malinformation, security are just some of those, reputational risk and others. And so guiding principles are their recommendation of how we do that. So where will the payout be if going down the Gen AI on here? And their view is 2/3 is in efficiencies and 1/3 is in innovation. Efficiency, especially with internal processes, are where we expect to see those start. You can see that from our current vendors, how you can automate and how you can and find other ways that AI can help you to do the tasks that we're doing in much faster, better way. Innovation is harder. Using Gen AI to be able to come up with brand new ideas and new industries or new operation methods on here will take longer and a lot more experimentation. So and they classify it into 2 different kinds of AI. The first one, everyday AI. Departments can realize significant productivity gains. That many of those are in the efficiencies area on here. They're saying we've got today across the board could be huge, right? A huge amount of savings on there. And many of the tools are by our current software vendors, leveraged through others. And then this last point here, that the gains will become table stakes, and in the end will not lead to competitive advantage. So the point there is that everybody will be moving in this direction. They will see those gains, but it won't be a competitive advantage because the competition's already done that work. You'll only be at a disadvantage if you don't. So that's what they're saying about everyday AI. The other one is game-changing AI. Those are the transformational changes that lead to business model changes on here. So and they can be entire industries and all new products, or reinventing core capabilities using AI in this way requires a different way of thinking and working. An example of this that they gave was of a new drug company in Hong Kong that is just using AI to identify potential drugs to be developed. And so they will, and they've been able to come up with a number of them with a very small staff as compared to the number of scientists that are typically employed in a drug company. Now, how successful are they? What's the long-term success rate of those kind of things? Don't know, but they're upending the market by using data that they have they've been able to get in how that AI works. They introduced this thing called the AI Opportunity Radar as a way to identify where you might want to play in this market here. The lower half is internal operations, the upper half is external operations, and typically internal back office or core capabilities, products and services. Front office might be, how do we use AI in say a chat bot in order to be able to answer customer questions on there, and where you start on one end from every day and go to the changes, and then you use this to plot your projects to say where are they and what level of risk do I feel like. There are they identified 3 scenarios on here that you might go for on here. One is just to start out by defending your position here, quick wins that improve specific tasks like Microsoft Copilot, Salesforce Einstein, maybe, that kind of a thing. Extend your position, invest in custom applications that provide a competitive advantage, i.e. wealth management, Gen AI, assisted financial advisors to create financial plans, and then upend your position in creating new AI-powered tools on here. So just one more thing about these 3 on here. The first one, might be fairly simple to do, right? If you've already got a vendor, you can turn on the option, you train people, you tell them how to use it, and they're up and running and seeing the benefits, hopefully. The second one might be require more work from your team on here. And then the third one requires a lot of work. The view on 2 and 3 are start small, pilot, see if it works, and then stop if it doesn't. Don't be prepared for big expense, but don't spend it all until you get your footing and you feel like you know what you're doing. According to the slide on here, different ways that organizations and then just a slide that they presented on here about the difference between a tool and a teammate, and how AI can go from what it can do for us to what it can be for us. And then this concept they also introduced here about an intelligent application, the combination between the one that were before, where we might be packaging the applications on here, to the ones that can be learning and developing better as it goes. So not just providing answers, but also constantly improving itself. And then after there was a bit of us that were a little shell-shocked during some of these presentations on here, they tried to make it so that if you're not doing it yet, what they came back and said, if you're not doing it yet, that's okay. But what they looked at was, first off, start getting your data ready. Make sure that you're doing the things over on the right-hand side. So is it ethically governed? Your data must align and develop your lighthouse principles. Is it secure? Is it free of bias as much as possible? Is it enriched on here? So these are the things that you can do in order to get your data AI ready, and start to get it so that you can start to leverage it when when your organization wants to move. And then 4 actions in the next 12 months that they specifically said on here, principles, or what they call lighthouse principles, to guide your organization of AI. So if you're afraid that AI might, might have some kind of a bias, say a human bias on there, that could be one of your lighthouse principles, that we check with diverse, our match up with our values, lighthouse principles like that, or that we never put our data in a public area that can be accessed by others, so that it's always secured. Those are the kind of principles that they recommend you think through and put in place on there. And then the AI ready data that I just went through on there. Also implement security here. So the creation and acceptable use policy for any kind of public generated AI solutions. Some companies have already done this, but in a very strong way, and said that people should not use it, or they shouldn't use it to put anything that's in the environment on there. But there are other ways that you can leverage Gen AI with that's a little bit more open than totally locking folks out. And then the part here, if you haven't started, it's okay, but you better be on a path here by the end of the year. A couple of other general on here. One is that they believe it's going to be a meta industry with various sectors, such as hardware, software, services. So instead of just talking about Gen AI as a chatbot on here, that hardware vendors will get into this, and others will. So it's not just one thing, and that Gen AI will be used in many different ways as its own huge industry. That's one of the things they talked about in informal conversations that I had with certain reps on here, and that's why I put an asterisk on here, that they're still not 100% sure on how to handle AI. So they're making their own recommendations about it, but I think as you saw some of those recommendations saying, answer here on there, I think even for their own use, they're not sure, but they're also saying everybody's learning right now, and it's happening so fast. And this last one here I thought was quite interesting here, that misuse of early AI users have tainted and prejudiced the AI ecosystem, forcing some organizations to rebuild their entire AI database. So, as people are putting some junk in there, as people have been misusing the way that it's going through it, that sometimes you have to just go in and clear it out and restart in the case in there. So that is quite a warning. And if you're building your own, is just to make sure that we're clear about what data we put in and where we head on. So I went through it fast, but I wanted to because I know we've got a lot more to talk about on here, but just wanted to perhaps, Alex, open up for anyone who had any questions on here, or if you had any points you wanted to make, Alex.
Well, first of all, great job. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
First of all, awesome job. Yeah, there are a few questions, and I've got a few questions. So we'll start with Jean's question. She said slide 17 references to the payoff, and she wants to know, is that general AI or AI in general? I have to see the slide, so maybe show us the slide again. Why don't you keep sharing, by the way?
Okay, sure.
I'm going to refer a couple slides also on my questions.
So
there you go. Yeah, let's keep it like that until you're done with the segment.
Okay.
So,
yeah. So in this case on here, they're talking about Gen AI is really what they're talking about here. So those are where you see the biggest uptick.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there you go, Gene. Gen AI is what they're talking about. All right, so let's go over. Why don't you put it back on slideshow? We'll flip around if you want to. Jean's saying thank you with her thumbs up. It's kind of cool how I see a little floating thumb going up on the interface. So, anyways, the thing about the vacuum cleaner. What'd they call that thing?
So the individual, the person, the customer called it Merrill Sweep.
Merrill Sweep.
Yeah,
What a
yeah,
great name.
yeah, yeah. And their point there was that it became part of the family, and
Right.
how would you know the difference if if you sent a new one, you could name it the same thing if you wanted. It was connected into their family, and they didn't want a brand new one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, it's interesting. It's very interesting and fascinating and troubling. These things are not humans, and they're not even dogs. They're not pets.
Mhm.
They're devices. It's technology. So
Right, and so when you think about that, what's the difference between a Google search and a chatbot for when you're contacting
yeah,
a vendor or something like that. I put in exactly what I need in the Google search, but in the chatbot, I'm polite and thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
yeah.
Am I talking to a human or am I
You
not?
don't
I'm
know.
assuming I am, right? Right. You don't know, but I'm assuming I am. So I want to show good manners there.
Yeah,
So that's kind of the reality of what they're talking about is that there's going to come a point where you may not realize whether there's a human or not, and that can be good and that can be bad.
yeah. I always ask in a chat. I always ask, "Are you a human?" Right up front. Of course, they could lie, but I always ask for that very reason. I want to know what who I'm talking to. Let's go back to your main trends, not just the AI, but
The
it
10 ones,
really,
yeah,
yeah,
this one, right? Hmm.
yeah. I thought that was very interesting. And the first time you presented, it, I didn't catch all that. And I read it afterwards. Go to energy. We'll talk about energy and power, or actually, that's who gets the power. Energy. That's very troubling. I was really surprised when the Texas grid went down. And then you read about in California how they're going to all EVs, and then they have these periods of rationing already.
Right.
And I'm not getting into any politics, just being trying to figure out this. It's very troubling because we're creating this situation. It seems like we're creating a macro situation where these guys are right. Monthly rationing. That's crazy that we should be in that situation.
Yeah.
And by the way, for my dystopian, I'm going to do a segment on this show eventually called Dystopian Movies. Let's not forget The Matrix, why they were getting energy, what the whole motivation was to begin with was energy, right?
I think that their point here was the reasons why was that we haven't been making the investments in the grid,
In the
and
grid,
and
right?
yet and energy usage has been going up. So whether you talk about electric cars or the source of the energy, that's just one factor. It's really that the grid in Texas's situation, they have their own grid versus the east or the west of
I
the rest of
know.
the country, and they definitely had made the right investments into that. So this can be fixed, right? I mean, there's been more investments been made in it. It can be fixed here, and sometimes these warnings are like sci-fi, right? It's not what's going to happen; it's what could happen if we don't do something. So,
But it
um,
is happening. That's the point I'm making is that it's already happening in some situations in some states. And I think you're right. Whoever is making any of these decisions, which is out of our personal control, we need to invest in our grid. It's core infrastructure. So I agree with you. But it's troubling that they're saying it's going to happen. They're not just saying it might happen. They're saying 50% will experience this regularly in 2 years.
right, right.
That's a
Mm.
big deal. Now, what is that? 70% of legacy applications explained by AI. Does that mean they're going to put a wrapper around it? This sounds to me like client server, remember?
Oh, yeah. I think this is the modernization is what they're talking about there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what they're
That's
really doing. They're going to have an AI customer experience, whether it's internal or external. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or been rewritten by AI,
Uh,
yeah, which is high, in 3 years, many of these systems, could be decades old, and to have them rewritten, all of them, the 70% of them rewritten in 3 years, that
mhm.
seems like a very high percentage there.
Yeah. So now we skip past the hype cycle. I think we can all agree we're in a huge hype cycle, and we all have been. Anyone that's on my show, technology folks, will know that we've gone through multiple hype cycles. But what's really interesting is these. Uh, there's a lot of things that you said that I found very interesting. But where's the part about the payoff? You had a pie chart with a blue and a green.
Was that this one?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's really interesting. So the immediate payoff right now is individual productivity. Using these tools, like how do I get my spreadsheet to work better? Like the things that we're already doing, do them faster. That's what I'm getting. Do them fast. Like marketing is an easy one because you see a lot of that on LinkedIn. But I made this video, or I
Mm.
wrote this post, or I worked this. And if you're, every tool out there is announcing AI is integrated. You're telling me Salesforce is still working on theirs.
Things, but you've got to be able to focus on the benefits. That's the thing here, is not
Right.
just we're using AI, but we're receiving these kind of benefits from it. That's the part on here that we have to learn.
I think you're 100% on the money. And I got a comment right here from Gene. It is recorded. I got a comment from Gene from Sundeep saying using Chat GPT to get feedback on resume, draft cover letter, compare a job against one's resume. That's a perfect example. Thanks for that. Of getting more efficient. Because
Mhm.
anybody who's going to apply for a job that is going to eventually get and keep the job knows how to write a resume and knows how to write a good letter, but it might take them hours or days to go through multiple drafts and get other just the process. So the process is just going to be a lot faster. But the real aha here is that's just table stakes is the real aha on this chart is that's just what you got to do to buy into the game. So what I'm hearing is if you're not doing this now, you will be left behind. So anybody watching the show, man, if you haven't started experimenting with AI tools for whatever you do, I think that's the key, Tom. For whatever your role is, wherever you do, find like for me, like I'd like to find some AI to help me edit these videos. Right? Because you and I talked about that. You're on the board. We give you videos and quotes. I'd like to see if there's a way to do that and speed up that process. But if you're doing pivot tables and you're a CFO or you're an analyst, right? It'd be nice to have those pivot tables being easier to use, right? That would be an example.
Right, right. And the other point was that you see a lot of solutions, and I know, Alex, you send these out in LinkedIn
Yeah,
here,
all the
these
time.
charts.
Yeah.
What their view on that is that that if you're going to use some of those, don't commit too far to those. Use them until somebody better, because next week something better might come out on there. These point solutions that you see there, their recommendation is that either your vendors, whether it's Microsoft,
Uh,
whether Azure or Copilot or whatever, is going to start bundling these things together, or else you develop them, you include them yourself and decide how you're going to use them as opposed to the one. But for now, go ahead and start using those. So the video one you're talking about, Go Charlie's one, you can just plug in the URL and it will come back and tell you exactly what was said in there in that whole video and bullet point the whole thing out. So those are great to use. They're great efficiency gains. but others, but this will keep moving faster and faster, and it's a short-term strategy to leverage those.
Yeah, I think that's a good insight. And I got a comment from Steve I'll mention in a second, but the second, what I'll mention now, then I have one last comment on here, then two other questions, then we'll move on to the panel because this has been awesome. You and I could talk for an hour, I know, and we're getting good questions. Steve's mentioning I did a POC with ChatGPT yesterday, defeated a generic customer contract, asked it to pull out all the relevant data points. It did an amazing job, made me think about how to use it to load data into ERP systems, which is where I see so many ERP projects go wrong. The only caveat on that I've been reading is just watch which license you have and what rights you have with the data, because once you stick it into the public one, you're sharing. But having said all that, I think that's a great use case. Both of those are great use cases, Steve. So where would the AI payoff be? The next slide, and why don't you jump to the next one, two kinds of AI, because it really says it, is innovation. So to me, it's just kind of like they don't really, like you said, okay, we'll just throw it into the innovation bucket, which means we don't know. We don't know what's going to be created yet, but somebody's going to just trust, somebody's going to figure it out, right? That's kind of how I'm reading that one. And I think we can all agree it's going to create an entire industry. You show that on another slide. And just like we didn't know what all the apps would come out with a cell phone and how it would change, and all of a sudden, we're seeing all these different apps and productivity uses for cell phones. We didn't all have a clue for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It creates a whole new ecosystem, a whole new world. Not to mention, we'll talk about in the other thing, some of the other major technologies that are coming together at the same time. So I think you're right on the money there. This was great. Last slide, is where to play. And I think you will even see on the panel, depending if you're conservative or more aggressive, we'll kind of see where you're going to play, right, in this. Like if you're a marketing agency, you're gonna incorporate this into your product line, right, into your service right now. But if you're doing something where you have like an insurance company, where you have a fiduciary relationship and you have regulations that you got to pay attention to, or if you're healthcare, HIPAA, you're going to be a lot more careful with that data, right? Correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, because you have to. No one wants to go to jail for sticking something in Chat GPT and they release the wrong data. Well, this was amazing. Any last comments that you want to make on this? Any conclusions? I mean, you've done this a couple times that you really felt like this was your big aha.
I no, nothing additional on there. I just other than we have to. It's important to keep talking about it, and to involve senior leadership into this too. They're the ones that will need to make decisions about where you're actually going to play. Just as you said there, Alex, whether it's how much risk are we willing to take? What are the what are the big bets that might
Yeah.
transform us, or where it goes in there? It shouldn't be an IT decision. It shouldn't be one group over others. It should be your leadership team is the one that needs to be making the decisions about where we should be finding these making these investments.
Yeah. Well, listen, great job.